Are we ready to go? Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this edition of the NITheCS Colloquium. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Francesco Petruccione. I'm the director of NITheCS. And this afternoon, it's a great pleasure to welcome again Ruan Veldtman. Ruan is a senior scientist at SANBI, the South African National Biodiversity Institute, but is also associate professor at university in Stellenbosch in the Department of Conservation Ecology and Entomology. Yeah?
That's correct.
And some of you have heard him already before in this series, and today it's give us a very interesting talk on social media and wasps.
Yes, thank you very much.
So Ruan, please, welcome.
Yep. Thank you very much, Francesco. Hi, everyone. Thank you for attending. Is the sound fine? Okay. Yes, so this talk I wanted to give after a recent trip I did to Australia with my friend Edwin Niemand, who's also here today. And you'll see how this has actually changed the sort of idea how I do my current research on the invasive wasps, invasive social wasps. So yeah, without further ado, let me start. So let me quickly introduce just what is a wasp. This is Wasp Web. So if you search on the internet, Wasp Web, this is a site maintained by Dr. Simon van Noort, a colleague of mine. And he's a curator at the Iziko Museums of South Africa. And he's a hymenopterist. So this is a person that works on bees, wasps, and ants. And on his site, yeah, I've only highlighted the superfamilies of Hymenoptera. And today I'm going to talk about only one of them. So there's incredible diversity. I think there is 144 insect families in these superfamilies that are shown, very diverse in structure. So yeah, one could do a talk about any one of these. So the group I want to talk about are social wasps. And we have three very important groups. Those are the yellow jackets or the Vespa up here, Vespula. Then we have hornets here and here. And these are a lot in the media. So the top is the Asian hornet that's busy invading Europe. And here we have what the US calls the murder hornet or the Japanese giant hornet. And then you also get paper wasps that can be invasive. This is the European paper wasp. But today I'm going to talk mostly about the German wasp. Okay, so just quickly, this talk's also structured that obviously you'll be seeing some science and also related to management and then how it intersects with social media. So I did this article a while back for the conversation, and it was to raise awareness on invasive social wasps, and we only have 2 in South Africa. And what's interesting, there's also no other species in the rest of Africa south of the Sahara. So there's, it gives you a clue to why these things come to this part of the world. And it's also important then to also look at different continents because we're not isolated. And this conversation article was great. When it was released, there was a whole bunch of reads, and it's still, there are people reading it, mostly South Africa, but also other places. Then also today I'm going to talk a lot about iNaturalist. I gave a presentation last year also about iNaturalist, so there'll be a few touch points in this presentation. And how this is actually the premier biodiversity social science platform, which I encourage everyone to use. And then you can also still do traditional awareness raising. Yeah, I was giving a talk. You can see Wasp Web there in the background to the Stellenbosch Hoërskool assembly with about 600 scholars listening. And then I also showed one of Edwin's crazy videos, and there was a nice ripple effect through the crowd. Okay, so just to get a bit more serious. So the trip to Australia wasn't just for fun and games. This was to start a collaboration with Mark Widmer, who's a senior technical officer at the Department of Primary Industries and Research Development. And they have a successful German wasp eradication program. So I'll be touching on that today. And it was really a privilege to go and visit him. And I also went with Edwan. But more about him now. So Edwan was Edwan's also known as the slung O, or the snake guy. And he has this site, Bueland Snake Removals 24/7 and pest control. So we've linked up through the pest control. And you can see now he's got 182,000 followers, probably slightly more since last week. But yeah, those are the stats. And then he also had this idea to do these shirts. So what I'm wearing now. So for our trip to Australia, we wore these matching shirts, very loud. You sort of forget you're wearing it, you're standing at the airport, and why is everybody staring at me? But that's exactly the point. And there's a lot of interest always from the public, and also logoing, very important. So here's Edwan's vehicle that he uses for the snakes. And there you see he's also put a little wasp sticker on his vehicle. So yeah, it was a real treat to go with him. But let's see how we performed. Firstly, I just want to also thank Vodacom for you in the poll. This is Sean, and they loaned me this phone. And I was such a phone noob that I actually posed for the picture with the phone the wrong way around. And Edwan said, listen, no one can see it's a smartphone because you can't see the cameras and things. But this phone made it possible to take pictures which I never could take before. So this doesn't look impressive, but yeah, I'm about 4 or 5 meters away from this wasp nest, and I can get a very nice picture of the wasps, and I can then put it on iNaturalist and someone will identify it easily. This is a tiny, tiny wasp. It looks like an ant, but it's actually a wasp. And this was on my lunchbox when I went to the field work, and I only discovered it later. And then I could take a picture. So this is a piece of Tupperware containers. You can see how small this wasp is. And then this rather crude picture, which you can still see, it's the German wasp, is one while it's busy foraging on the lawn. And again, they don't sit still very long to get a picture. So this is an action shot. So having decent equipment really makes it all the difference. Here's a photo from Australia. So this is a piece of fish on a pole with their department's branding, and that wasp is busy cutting off a piece of fish. It will then return to the nest, and the idea is that your wasp controller is busy looking in which direction that wasp is flying. And then you'll get a heading, and then you can deploy another stick and do the same, and then you start to triangulate where the nest is. And they have a very nifty app. I think it's called Sigtrex or something like that. And that actually on a map will show you this is the point where those two paths intersect. And they usually find the nest then within 20 meters of that specific point. So we have a lot of wasps. It's not really necessary, but you really start to depress their population. You need to be very careful to find them. Okay. This is actually a nest in the Stellenbosch Botanical Gardens, and this was taken about a month ago. And there you can see the wasp carrying something, that one as well. So again, with this camera, there you can see it's a piece of soil. So these wasps are still excavating their nest bigger to make room for more wasps when they hit the reproductive stage. Again, that camera, very nifty, made a video, and then you can take freeze frames. And the detail is amazing. So thank you, Sean and Vodacom, for you. And then if you have really nice shots, they're not just nice pictures, you can now deposit them on iNaturalist. So I have quite a few for Vespula germanica because I work on them. And it is then a permanent capture of your observation. And looking back, I can see all the interesting nests that were done and places. And then afterwards, you can also pull reports and things from the site. Then just before the Australian trip, we also started with the help of my daughter this Instagram account. Again, previously never on Instagram, never used it, so steep learning curve. And now what we do is maybe have a volunteer working with me or my family, and then we control a nest, and people are always very interested to know what's happening. So there's the nest, and then if you excavate it, that's what it looks like. So you're also educating the public, and it's something fun to do. So it's still a small site, only 133 followers. I think there's one more recently. But the idea is, this is again a record showing what's done. So this would be science in action. But again, it's on a platform. You don't have to worry about it later on. And I actually referred someone who wanted help on how to do it themselves. I said, well, go watch the videos. It was almost like a tutorial. Right, so here's some of the pictures from the Australian trip. There's Mark. I'll show a picture of him later. And what's very key is you need to identify yourself. So this isn't a parking area attendant. This is actually a biosecurity surveillance officer. And there's even a whole team of WASP people that have that indicated on their shirts. Here's a cartoon of myself and Edwin. And also when you're in Australia, very strict rules. So you have to have safety wear, so you can be identified. And also if you do a construction site, you need safety boots. So we also had to wear those. Then they have a whole fleet of vehicles that they rent, indicating their department. And these vehicles then go out and visit sites, and if they have to do detection or eradication. And then on the sort of end of the trip was a talk I gave at the different offices, and that was also well received. And then here at the top, this is a very nifty battery-operated blower, and this is powdered insecticide in this canister. And then basically you just puff this into the wasp nest, and then within 10 minutes they start dying. And what's nice is you leave the nest open, so returning wasps also get covered by the insecticide and then die. So the Australia trip had a lot of interest. So there was a Afrikaans newspaper that did an article, Die Burger did an article before we went and then when we returned. And then Edwin also made sure to report every step on the trip on Facebook. So what I did was pull all the statistics from Edwin's posts for that week. So I have here 24 posts, and then you can see the number of likes, comments, shares, and views. So some of them I couldn't find the actual number of views, so that's empty. But if you look at this relationship I drew, we can see that for the 24 posts, more than 20,000 likes, more than 2,500 comments, and more than 1 million views of the material we generated. So reaching a whole bunch of people. Then what I also want to do practically going forward is get a car company to sponsor a vehicle, which we would then turn into a wasp and do it aesthetically pleasing, so that it's not just a sticker on the car, but actually that it's fully integrated, so that we have the birth of a wasp car. And I think this would also generate a lot of interest for both the car maker and for myself. It would be a huge boost to the research effort. So these are the kind of collaborations one can make that advances science and get your project out there. So why generate all this hype? So what we're planning to do, based on the Australian example, is to start an eradication program for Vespula germanica in the Western Cape, the only province where it still occurs in South Africa. And it's been in the country for more than 50 years. And we're seeing disturbing things in terms of rate of spread. And then also what I'm building towards is a draft plan to implement eradication plan. So just to quickly look at some climate suitability mapping. Here we have a climax model for South Africa. So the optimal is the red areas, and then green is marginal white. It's predicted not to occur. And here you can see the distribution records at that time. And we see that it is in a very optimal place, but the rest of South Africa is still predicted to be very suitable. And it could be a over prediction. So we're also looking at some finer scale models. I have collaborated here, Adrian van Niekerk, and he's helping with this work. We must still publish. And basically, we are also generating pseudo absences to better understand or predict how many wasps are there actually going to be. And probably this sort of middle estimate is quite accurate. So we see here in the Boland, we have a very large predicted population. Also interesting around the Tygerberg, then the northern suburbs, and then the very old part of the invasion next to Table Mountain. So also if we look at some of the invasion history, I've shown here some dates. So Kleinmond 2018, Hemel and Aarde Valley 2020, 2016, this campsite next to the Brede River, Sierras 2014, and then Klein Witzenberg 2020. So what we are seeing is a slow exit of the Boland area in every direction. And here I've shown blue dots and red dots. So the blue dots is one particular haplotype, and the red dots is another kind of haplotype. So what we're seeing is spatial separation. So the blue haplotypes basically do better in the Table Mountain area, but then the red one does better in the rest of the Western Cape. And then we have this interesting contact point around Stellenbosch, very interesting enough, and Kirstenbosch. Okay, so also key things to think about. Before 2000, this was the distribution of the wasp. And then suddenly, after 2005, this was the distribution of the wasp. So there was an event that happened, the wasp moved from year to year and then spread. And now over time, we're seeing further spread. So these are important things to note. So if you plot then the distance from the original point of introduction, where it was first detected, which is Kirstenbosch, and we plot these other localities, we start finding these different lines. So the blue haplotype is quite stationary. So over a long period of time, it is still not spread very far from the original distribution. But the red haplotype, we see evidence of a accelerating relationship. And these two dots here, that's the most recent jump dispersal locations which we found in the Cederberg. And there's actually another one, and that one and the other one are actually on iNaturalist, which is great to see. So I also then had other colleague, Francois Bakker, help me pull the locality, for each locality where you saw that dot, what the actual environmental variables are. And then if we plot summer maximum temperature and annual maximum temperature, there's a difference between the two haplotypes. So it would seem that haplotype 1 possibly originated from a warmer climate in Europe, whereas haplotype 2 from a colder part in Europe. And what that then means is the colder loving haplotype is not performing very well in terms of invasion, but that the red one, possibly maybe from the Mediterranean, is doing very well, and we are seeing its performance increasing over time. So just to summarize those rate of spread findings, first recorded 1972, 2001 we suddenly had an expansion in the Boland, and now we're seeing a much faster rate of spread than previously. And as I mentioned, we think it's because of the thermal performance of those two haplotypes and the difference. And the trend worryingly suggests that there's an increasing tempo. So at what point, if we leave it long enough, are we going to see a massive jump? And I showed you that map of South Africa where it is potentially suitable for those species. It's very concerning. Okay, so now to just quickly promote iNaturalist again. So these are some of their slides. there was a very nice webinar a while back, and their whole motto is open source, open access, and you can use these slides as long as you acknowledge them. So this was quite a striking image. That day they gave the webinar. These are all the observations that were captured. And I think the loops is who actually identified it. So it shows you the interconnected web on iNaturalist in real time, how biodiversity is being documented and then also identified. And because it's mostly based in America, you see this trend where in the summer months, there's a whole increase in data observations. And when it's the winter in the Northern Hemisphere, there's actually a low. So what we actually want is more Southern Hemisphere records to start entering the database. And iNaturalist isn't just a sole platform. Its information gets sent to GBIF. So if a iNaturalist observation gets a research grading, so two people at least concur on the identification, that becomes GBIF data, and GBIF is fundamental for all sorts of policy making on biodiversity. And then just to also show how it's performing, so there are other publishers, but in terms of species, there's no equal for iNaturalist. So here we have almost 400,000 species being covered, and it's actually more now. And then something like eBird has many, many more observations, but it's actually only a fraction of the species on the globe. So here I pulled some statistics just for iNaturalist, and this was when I gave my iNaturalist NITheCS Colloquium in October, and then we had 215 million observations captured by 3.4 million people, and for South Africa, this was 4.5 million observations captured by 36,000 people. And if I just select the insects, over 500,000 observations, and encouragingly for 10,000 species. So there's many more insects in South Africa, but at least we have data for 10,000 of those. Now look how great this is. If we now go to yesterday, we see now that it's almost 250 million. So it's already gone up by that amount. From 3.4 million, now we have 3.7 million observers. So the word's getting out there, people are getting involved, and they're capturing insects. And then here, now we have from the 10,000 already 11,000 upwards. So yeah, it's definitely a worthwhile platform, and the more people use it, the better it's going to be for everyone. So I just want to show this. So for each species, there's a classification, and most people won't know what this is, but it shows your species and then in the hierarchy of classification. So someone who knows it's a wasp will say, okay, that must be Hymenoptera. But maybe you get more skilled and you can do I think it's Vespoidia. And then you can have other experts who say, okay, well, this is a needle-waisted paper wasp, so that must be Brenogaster. So that's how the system works. And my point I want to straight here is your citizen scientists can interact with hardcore taxonomy, and they can also upskill themselves. Then I also believe if you use it, you must also put into it. So this is my profile on iNaturalist. So I have almost 750 observations, 380 species, and then I've done more than 15,000 identifications on iNaturalist. So what I get out of it, you see interesting observations. I have several projects, so you can create a project with the particular thing you're interested in, and then each morning you can go, okay, are there any new interesting observations? So here's, for example, one. Although there's strained relations between the USA and South Africa, it doesn't mean we can't do an iNaturalist project together. And I collaborate on this with Professor Sarah Miller in the middle of the United States, where she's based. And it's quite interesting comparing the USA with South Africa in terms of the number of species and their distributions. And there's a fantastic publication for North America, and it would be great if there could be something like this for South Africa or Southern Africa, because this would then be a hard copy where you could look at the species and you could, this could help you also identify the species, the ones you're really interested in. So then if I've put in a filter, okay, I'm just interested in South Africa's paper wasp in that particular project. We can see here there's 4,600 observations, and each one of these observations will have a picture, identification, and then also the date it was collected. So there's a large number of data being captured there. And then also you can, at a glance, just see the different number of species. Sometimes this will be higher than it should be if there's a single observation and someone's picked something that occurs in North America, and then it's the responsibility of maybe your more experts to go and police that and then just say, no, I don't agree with this classification, or the observation can't be trusted. So there's the whole time there's quality control. But I do want to show something exciting as well. So if we plot all the paper wasp observations, I added the invasive species. So there's more records for the invasive species. But then for each of the others, there's a number of observations. And as most biodiversity information, you have a long tail. So many species, there's only few records. And it could be that they're naturally rare or that people just don't interact with them. So I just want to highlight this one, a Rippolidia, or small paper wasp is the common name. And this species was described only in 2022. So this is a largest insect. Yeah, I've marked a new observation. So since I gave the talk in October, there's already one extra observation or 20% more data. And hopefully this will be carry on identifying this species and capturing its biodiversity data. So if we just look, that's the locality where it was identified. And then iNaturalist is also alive. So we have the person that made the observation, and then you have experts that volunteer their time, or it's interesting for them, and they go and identify. So this is what I mentioned. This person said, okay, it's Rippolidia, and then someone else will venture a species, and then we have another expert that confirms the species. Then this changes into a research grade observation. And I just want to show this. So this person has done, at that time, almost 600,000 identifications. It's a real service to the INAT community, and it depends on people that do this voluntarily. So this is the paper I mentioned. This actually formally described that species, and it's so characteristic, you can't mistake it. And there's Dr. Simon van Oort that I mentioned, the creator of WaspWeb, and he's also a serious insect taxonomist. And this is another international expert that he's worked with, and they've done this publication. And it's not an isolated case. Here we have another species, Polistes ornatus. And the expert says, well, this is the first time I've seen this. So you can't be everywhere, but people go out. They want to go into nature to relax, to get away from people. And that's a prime opportunity to capture biodiversity that hasn't been captured before. So obviously you can see I like wasps. I have quite a lot of wasp projects. Here's one on the invasive European paper wasp, then on yellow jackets, the German one and the common yellow jacket, and then also hornets. So I like to keep track of the hornets just to make sure that it's not some nasty that's been detected by the public before you even know about it. And I just want to show this. So we also, things can be extralimital. So this western yellow jacket occurs in the west of North America, but this record is for right on the opposite coast. And there's the picture, and then someone's also made a note. So this individual was on a semi-trailer from Oregon. Truck was carrying evergreen shrubs and trees. So that iNaturalist observation has actively capture the accidental transportation of that insect. And sure, there'd probably be many more that we never know about, but without this platform, one would never know of that. And there are actually iNaturalist project owners who've created one specifically for bees and wasps that pop up in different places. So this is the European paper wasp and its current distribution in the Western Cape. There's one extra record, but it gives you a feel, so it's mostly around towns, but there are also some outliers. So obviously not perfect data, but much better than not having it. So the idea behind this invasive paper wasp reporting tool was to see how can we even increase the amount of iNaturalist data. And my brother Alex I'll introduce him just now, he's helping with this. So why do we need this tool? We want to map as accurately as possible the invasive spread of this species. And people can maybe remember 2013, 2014 in the northern suburbs of Cape Town. It was a real pest. Everyone was complaining that their children are getting stung by the wasp when they play on the lawns because the wasps are there looking for food. So yes, the goal is precise distribution data and at the same time make people aware of this species. So through a Facebook site, I think Insects and Small Things, this person posted a picture that was from Oudtshoorn, and it was actually a male European paper wasp. So you can see the distance. So that is another one of those jump dispersals. And if it's a male, it shouldn't be a problem, but just as well a female could be transported, and then you wouldn't just have that wasp here in Cape Town, it would also start popping up in Oudtshoorn. So it's a very difficult situation. You have the potential for spread everywhere, but you can't be everywhere. That's why getting citizens to help you monitor is so important. And for me, working with this wasp for quite a long time now, I can see the differences quite clearly, but non-experts can be confused because both are black and yellow, but then things like orange antennae versus black antennae is a nice go-to character to separate the two species. And then you also have our local paper wasps, which are brown. So again, this one very different, but the same idea, external nest where you can see the cells. There you can see the larvae, and then there's the larvae. You can see the little faces looking up, and then they'll spin a silk plug and then pupate and then emerge later as an adult wasp. But when you put more options on the board, it becomes a bit more daunting for non-experts. So here we have a paper wasp, here we have a honeybee, and I hope most of you can see the difference between a wasp or a bee and a wasp. Here we have a potter wasp, a paper wasp, the yellow jacket. Here we have a sand wasp, and here we have a pollen wasp. So yeah. So the idea is, the word we've coined is wasp app. So instead of WhatsApp, we have wasp app. And my brother is a mechanical engineer. Mechanical engineer. And also a software developer. So this is already an interesting combination. And he's done these mock-ups, and he's busy with, and we plan to in October launch WASP app formally. And it's sort of like an interesting landing page before you go right into iNaturalist, because some people aren't biodiversity fanatics. They may be just curious, what's this black and yellow insect that I found in my house? Do I need to tell anyone about it? So you could also educate people in this way. So the idea is to cast the net wider, not just people who are already looking at biodiversity and look at wasps. Get everyone with a smartphone to see a wasp. And if you do some public awareness or media or an article or an interesting, crazy slung-o post, people will go and see, and it'll maybe inspire them to capture that record. So it's a willingness to assist, and it can be fun. Yeah, so then we can add things like little quizzes or reward good classification. Maybe you get a garden access to a very premier wine farm where you can go and look at their garden. So this is still under development. But the key thing is, just like iNaturalist goes to GBIF, what we're going to do connects to iNaturalist. So we're not reinventing the wheel. We just want to send more and more data to iNaturalist. So that's the idea behind it. And then what we can do when we're ready is to use social media to funnel people to the app to use it. And then hopefully as soon as we can hook them, it'll become addictive and they'll go and survey for us. And then we have an initiative that already engages the public, puts the word out there, and you have people aware and sensitized, and unwittingly they are part of a biosecurity network. Okay, so you just see our vision and our mission. And what's key is you want to make it as simple as possible to use. So that's also we want to, when we launch, it must be ready. We don't want any technical glitches. Other ones say, oh, WASP app, it's a terrible app. We're never going to use it again. So that's what we need to guard against. Okay, but now the problem is, it seems like the European paper wasp is on a downward spiral. So this plan I had to use INAT, maybe it's not going to give many records. Look, it'll still be interesting because maybe it'll spread slower, but we'll still get some new records. But no problem. We just swap it to the other species. So the mechanics are still the same. When you take the picture, it's just going to, we'll set it that it can suggest the German wasp or the European paper wasp. And it's again in the same area, so basically the same. But again, a vital component to our research. And what we can do, if I have collaborators all across the Southern Hemisphere looking at social wasp invasions, and the species may differ, or the species may be exactly the same, like with Mark here in Western Australia, Matthias here in New Zealand, and then Andres Amate in Argentina. All three of us have the European paper wasp and the German wasp. And then some countries also have the common wasp. But there's no reason why WASP app is up and running and we created here in South Africa that we can't help these others and let them run with their own local program to also try and make people aware of social wasp invasions and to collect more data. So that is the plan. So we also share then certain interest, these scientists across the globe working on social wasp invasions. And it's very nice to have a macroecological take to problems, because if we have a solution, for example, Western Australia, where they've eradicated the German wasp, we can then benefit from that in South Africa. But the thing stays the same. We want our early detection and rapid response to be as effective as possible, meaning we need all the help we can get. So just quickly want to introduce the WASP team. I had a retired visiting scientist, Derek Daly, who initiated, and we learned a lot. Gulu does GIS, Barbara does genetics, Adrian also with the geography and analysis. Kang works on mathematical modeling. My student Dikobi works on prey analysis. Arne is looking at the transport of Vespula queens in empty hive boxes. Our postdoc Damien is shared between Barbara, Kang, and myself, and he's doing a very interesting project of those three disciplines into one. And then the international collaborators, Andres and Mate. So Argentina is quite tough to work in because of their high inflation. So we still want to get a nice either American or a European grant that allows us Southern Hemisphere countries to work together, and then that outside funding will hopefully make it possible to address these WASP problems. And then here you see a picture of Mark and Matthias and Edwin, who's helping here in the Western Cape with collecting data and also awareness raising. So if you map all these people across the globe and others, you can see how many countries actually have people working on WASPs, but there are still gaps. So obviously any network that you have won't be absolutely complete, and we're still looking for collaborators in these areas. but hopefully we'll snag that very large international grant and then get to work with everyone. So just quickly want to run through the European WASP or the German WASP program in Western Australia. So they have this interesting concept of an adopt a trap initiative. So a member of the public who says, I'm really keen, would write to them, they'd get an actual trap, and then they just have to put a block of fish in that, and then every 2 weeks go and monitor, is there anything in the trap? So now you have essentially someone, a free technician that's looking after a trap, and it can be in a place where you wouldn't have access to anyway. So that's a really clever idea. So you see the trap, and when we went to Australia, we could now see how they make them. So a sticker to identify what it is. These little gauzes are 3D printed, and then they have a punch that punches through the plastic, and then you insert it, and it sticks there. And if the wasp then enters, it can't exit again. So a very effective, low-cost trap. And then when you trap them, you know there are wasps, then you can start searching for them. And there you see the tool, the insecticide applicator. Your control technicians need to be protected. Here you see a nest in the ground. See how arid it is, but they go underground. And yeah, so then it's basically hunting for these wasps. And when the population's either very high or it's too inaccessible, you can also use poison baits. So here's fish that's been laced blue so that they know there's an insecticide in it, fipronil, and that's then put in a dispenser trap like this. There's also QR codes, so you can select a trap and then scan, you know exactly which one you're working with. So you can either bait for them, so if you like the adopted trap, or you can actually dispense the insecticide. Yeah, and as I said, the German wasp or the European wasp, where they are interacts with people. Here's one on a lollipop. Here's one sharing someone's prime rib. Here's a nest in someone's ventilation duct in their house. So Edwin sees a lot of these. He's actually an expert at controlling them. And then also working with Australia to do a cost-benefit analysis. So to really show South African government that it's worthwhile doing, we're doing also an economic study to show how important it is to finally deal with these wasps. Yeah, so this trip to Perth was only a week. You see all the things it generated, the collaborations it launched. Yeah, really worthwhile. And thank you to NITheCS who sponsored my ticket and Edwin's ticket to go to this. So if we then compare stats between the Western Cape and Western Australia, so we're the only source nationally. They receive also wasps from Eastern Australia, so it makes it slightly more complicated. Our nests produce about 150, 200 queens. Theirs goes up to 1,000 to 3,000. So their wasp season is slightly longer because of milder temperatures. So the actual nest, if you leave it, is churning out more queens. So next season there's potential for more invasion. But again, it's worth us having a go. There's been no concerted effort to control the population, so it'll be a fresh try. And their program has been running for a very long time. And then slightly more complicated where we are. We have quite mountainous terrain where they have mostly low-lying terrain. So yeah, we'll see. It's going to be very interesting, even just an academic exercise to see what's going to happen. Okay, and there's also a crazy idea I had, and there's other crazy people. So this is, where's his name now? Japie Greef at Northwest University, and he works on games and gaming. I didn't know that was actually a research field, but it is. And here's one of my favorite games, Total War, and it's set in a medieval period where you have different provinces, you're a particular factional country, and you invade and spread and interact with the terrain. So this is a very nice way to think of the wasp control to make it fun, that you'd have certain resources to spend on biosecurity, you'd have a particular habitat that's maybe more or less suited, and then we could do simulations, and over time you're busy having a wasp war, and it's also teaching you about why resources are needed for biosecurity. So that's going to be something fun to do. So if we stand back, there's a lot of things there. There's WASP app, shirts. I haven't talked about Wazarku. I'll get to that just now. And then my elusive WASP car I want to get sponsored. And then also an Instagram account, so people can, that's also what the young people do. So Wazarku is a magazine uh, um, housed by NITheCS, and the editor, Prof. Sophie Marquez, is a mathematician. She does algebra. And then Nino is the head illustration artist, and she does these beautiful covers for the magazines. So as part of this awareness raising, we are doing 2 insect issues. And there's so much to talk about. We've actually split it into beneficial and pestiferous insects. And the pest one's probably going to come out sooner because we have more people that can write the articles, but we'll get to both. Okay, so this illustrates what I want to illustrate next is the wasp is only one project of a harmful insect. You get various insects, pests, indigenous pests, exotic pests. But for each baddie, you also get a goodie. So here we have all sort of beneficial insects. Here are some of the ecosystem services that they provide. So parasitoids control agricultural pests, bees and other pollinators important for crop pollination. And we have our own local honeybee, which is a real powerhouse, and then some other services. So what has given me this idea is this same focus and interest you're generating with the public, this can also be done for different research fields. So the idea with Bee Research Hub is to look at some very difficult issues that have been plaguing the honeybee industry for a very long time, but because the focus has been a lot of the time just a unifocus, we actually want to expand it to multiple fields. Then we have another beautiful insect that I don't know if probably some of you have heard of, the mupani worm that you can eat. But apart from it being edible, it's also a beautiful insect. Its population is also under threat because of overharvest. And it's something that should really be assessed. Again, the same thing, the more the public cares about it, I think the more funding there will be or interest there will be to do research on it. So if we take this interest that's being generated, for example, now on the wasps, and we plug it in, we're trying to, oh, battery is low. Okay, I'm almost done. Hopefully we'll last. So my idea further is to actually start the Center of Economic Entomology. And at the focus, you might say, what is economic entomology? It's what I've been showing you. It's the pest insects and the beneficial insects and putting a real spotlight on them to both document the positives and the negatives and make sure there's enough research that gets done on it. And it's very important because it'll help with the sustainable development goals. And you can see here again, so the beneficials and the pest insects, it makes a nice body of work. And we can look at some real buzzwords: global change, biological control, pollination, edible insects, and economics. So hopefully this in the future will happen. So the same idea had with looking at multiple scientists with the wasps. We could also roll this out to other topics, so not just the wasps, to buy the biodiversity economy, honeybees, and also biocontrol. So there's a lot one can do, and this is my mission to make this a reality. And hopefully in a short while, this will be possible. And I want to leave you with this image. This is a puzzle. Have we lost the? I think the laptop's dead. So what did I want to say? Hmm? The puzzle. Okay. So the idea with the puzzle is you'd maybe be working on a specific field and you'd be one of the puzzle pieces. But by casting the net wider, by sharing your idea with someone else, let's see Japie Greef, who's working on the gaming, um, that would allow multiple puzzle pieces. And the more puzzle pieces you have, the better you can understand that real life problem. So that is the sort of ethos behind working together and that idea of a larger entity like the Center for Economic Entomology to look at problems. But the idea is you won't wait for a problem, a conservation problem or invasive problem to come to you. You actually have all the people in-house already. And then you can go and look for funding to fund those projects. So hopefully that idea will appeal to someone, and then we'll get this thing started. Thank you very much.
Ruan, thank you very much for the
Thank you.
excellent talk. Sorry that battery let you down, but you were almost done.
Yeah.
Are there questions for Ruan? And then we will ask also the online audience if they have questions. Please. And then there. Okay, so then the same row.
So there is no benefit at all that wasps bring, right? That's why we want to eradicate them. That, or is it that they harm more than they bring benefit?
No. Context is very important.
Yeah.
So the wasps that that do not naturally occur here, they most of the time have a bigger impact than a benefit, or a bigger cost than a benefit.
And what is the benefit potentially?
So they also do pest control. So this German wasp, while it's doing so well in South Africa, it hunts other insects. So these could be caterpillars, or it does a lot of flies. So 80% of the diet is flies. The Kobe's work has shown. So we don't want, that's why also there's an education element. You don't want to go, people, wasp, bad, kill it, take a picture. No, it's context dependent. We want, with insects, it's not just the cockroach and the fly that you have around your house. There's so much more. And by ignoring the rest, we're not getting investment into insect taxonomy, which we desperately need. And it's also like playing roulette. What nasty insect are we going to get in future? So we need to be ready. We need people to help us monitor for these things.
If I could ask one more very short question. So I'm one of those who have wasps living in the setup that you showed inside the thing that needs to ventilate the house. What is my next step?
So
at some point they were kind of coming into the house, many of them, and it was a bit scary. What should we do as a next step?
So are they black and yellow? Yes. So here's an expert at killing them in the vent. I'll put you into touch with each other.
Thank you.
That'll be the next step. Thanks, Jurab.
Thank you.
Donovan, there was another question, I think, in the same row.
I don't have a question. Fantastic presentation.
Thank you.
I have a suggestion, and that's about the car.
Mm.
Don't call it the wasp car. Call it the wasp mobile, like in Batman.
Yes,
You
okay.
need to get a suit as
I'll
well.
make a note, mental note. Thank you very much. The suit I have, that's a good point. Thank you very much.
And any other marketing suggestion? Donovan, you need to walk back to the top. Discovery will be very happy for the steps.
Not marketing advice. I have none of that. But my question is, do you know how the invasive species got into the various regions where they're not native to? And what is the impact of their population growth on native wasp species?
Thank you for the question. So it depends on the insect species. We have different pathways. So my one student, she's here in the audience, Atendile, she's looking at spongy moth. And spongy moth lay their eggs on the actual cargo that goes on the ships. So that's a pathway. Then it comes into harbor. And if the timing is right and the eggs hatch, those caterpillars then balloon on a silk strand. around the harbor. And if they happen to land on a plant that they can eat, and they survive and, produce an individual, and there's maybe another one, they can mate and produce another generation. That is the starting point of an invasion then. But there's a whole large amount that still has to happen. So a lot of these things are probability. We also talk about propagule pressure. So the more cargo that's shipped, even if it's a 1% chance, that means a lot of things are going to come potentially. So it depends on the insect. I had Mark in Western Australia. I said to him, what is the funniest importation of a German wasp you've had? And they said someone ordered a red pair of stilettos, pair of shoes in a box, and when the inspectors opened the box, there was a yellow jacket inside the box, a queen. So these things can get around in multiple ways. And actually, the Asian hornet invasion in Europe is from one single queen that was in a piece of pottery that was exported from China to a residence in France. And by realizing it too late, that is the worst invasive insect at the moment in Europe.
Any other questions? Yeah, please.
Thank you for the talk. It was very wonderful. I have a question. It was about those haplotypes you showed on the map. Would you say there's behavioral differences between the two different, I want to say, haplotypic groups, or not really? And I wanted to also ask, maybe the reason why the red one is a bit more larger than, has more of an increase in population compared to the blue one. Do you think it has something to do with climate change?
I think they like South Africa more. I think they're becoming South African. So already the climate tolerances, they can do the hotter periods that we have. And I think the blue one originates from somewhere in Europe where it's usually cold. And Table Mountain, you'll speak to many Western Cape people. They say, well, it's very particular in the kind of weather. So it doesn't get very cold, but also doesn't get as hot. And then you come to the Boland and we have these massive heat waves. So I think that's part of it. And what the insects can do, they can adapt their foraging behavior. So when they go and look for the food, I would expect that cooler one to go for cooler spots when it's looking for food. And the hotter one would probably be able to cross some hotter areas and go and look for a place to catch food. So their performance is better. So I think that's a way. But it's still the same species. They can still interbreed. Damien, the postdoc's got some interesting data. We're seeing there isn't a lot of genetic DNA exchange, but you'll also do a talk at some stage, and it's a paper we've submitted now. So yeah, it's a lot of action around the wasps at the moment.
You mentioned that in Australia, the wasp nests can produce up to 3,000 queens, while in South Africa, it's a lot less. Any specific reason for that? Habitat, climate?
So Mark said to me, oh no, the season's still running for another 3 months. And I said, no, but ours is just a month. And we're on the same latitude even. So it's just, I think the coldest temperature around Perth is 8 degrees Celsius. So it's just the cold typically wouldn't bother the wasps that much anyway, being a European species. But that more a mild climate just allows them a longer chance to run the colony. So that's a huge risk to them. So their funders also want to cut the funding for the wasps. And he reckons if they stop completely for 2 years, they'll have the whole of the Perth Hills just flare up in an outbreak of these wasps again. Until they can stop the wasps coming from the east coast to the west coast, they're going to have to carry on with their program. But they've done the economics. They even promote their program. Let's keep our barbecue clean, because these things bother you at your barbecue. That's also why we had these slogans. Now we can barbecue when you sort out the wasp.
Do we have any questions from the online audience? No. Okay, please.
Ruan, since we have this cool snake guy here today. I wanted to ask, in the beginning, you said that you talked about his social media and you said, okay, but since last week, maybe his social media increased. So I was just curious, did something happen like that other one I watched on YouTube on his channel? I saw in Paul, that one that he took out that night, that big snake.
The one in
So-
the bed, or
Yeah, so in the bathroom. I'm petrified to even say it, but what I want to ask is, was there any interesting stuff? Or, it's just interesting how you guys are working together with the data. And yeah, so it's just interesting having this cool snake guy here today.
Edwin,
Yeah.
did you want to say something? The microphone's there.
Hello. Who asked the question? So you mean the increase around snakes or the wasps on my social media page? Yeah, with the snakes, there's some people fear some stuff, and I posted in the last month or what 2 specific videos that everybody fears, and that's a snake in the bed in the 73-year-old lady bed, and there was 19 million views on Facebook and on YouTube and on my Instagram and TikTok account. And the other one is when you go to a toilet, not putting on the light 12 o'clock at night, like that one lady, and she took her whips and she felt something in the toilet and she jumped up, put on the light, and the snake was going back in there. I actually came there, couldn't find the snake, and I put my endoscope up in the toilet's brim, and there was a Cape Cobra of 1.6 meter forcing himself in there and took it out. Took me about an hour, and that video also went viral on social media. And as soon as just after that, you can post anything about wasps because everybody's attention around that video on social media. Then they ask questions about the wasps, and maybe that's why we end up in Australia for wasps.
Thank you. Okay, then on that note, Ruan, thank you very much for the excellent talk. But I would also like to give you a piece of marketing advice.
Okay.
You should get a Vespa.
But it's too small to carry my ladder and things.
Yeah,
so.
but you can
Make
lend
a-
it to me. That was the intention. Yeah?
Alright.
Okay, so
I just quickly, Edwin, do you want to come forward quickly? Thank you. So Edwin, just to say thank you, I want to give you this book. It's by Clark Scholes, all on insects and specifically the pollinators, predators, and parasites. And I think that'll illuminate a lot of things for you, how it works. So thank you very much for all the help with the work. Thank you.
Thank you. Very nice meeting you.